Good morning. It's time for yoga with Jenny and dogs today. So I'm hoping to rescue my mat back from these guys, but they will be with me today. We are going to continue on with, I call it hippie yoga, hippies, our hips is what that refers to. And looking at specifically today kind of the balance to what we did on Tuesday. So what that means is we're not going to just want to go in one direction, right? We don't want to just move in one direction. We don't want to just strengthen one muscle. So we're going to kind of work into more of the adductor side of things today. We're looking at a lot of separation and sort of the outer hip strengthening on Tuesday, that perspective. So just a little different flavor to today's workout class practice. Go ahead and come onto your mat. What you need for today's practice is a yoga block. And they make, of course, many different, sizes, thicknesses of yoga blocks, materials, of course, as well. But even a yoga block, when you go to squeeze it, can be quite uncomfortable, no matter what the size, the width. You can make yourself more comfortable that way, but they still have these edges. So a lot of times I find, in particular, people who have just, more sensitive legs, that something a little squishier might be better. Now, this is a pretty big ball surface. So if you're using something like a tennis ball, that's not going to work, right? So it has to be something with a little width to it, sort of like replacing that block. So anyway, we're going to try to just start from deep inside and to start to feel, again, like we're trying to center ourselves. So literally working into the center, but also centering our hip, the thigh in that hip socket by balancing the forces on that hip in terms of muscle groups. So we're going to look at the inner thighs today. Come onto your backs. Bring the block with you. And start with it between your thighs. Now, some people say, no, don't go at the knee. I'm really going to leave that up to you. Do you experiment? Does it feel really, to me, it's a little tender right up at the upper thighs. The belly of the muscle seems to do best, and I don't really like the squeeze of the knees. So just explore. Be open. And take a couple deep breaths as you lie here. Give yourself permission to let your body move as you breathe. And I talk about this a lot, that we get into this retrograde breathing pattern where our breath is trapped and lifted, and we start to feel, as we get tense or stressed, that it gets choppy or even just really shallow. And I often find that it just takes a moment, or a couple moments, that is, to start to feel more movement through our torso. But a big part of that is just letting yourself move. I'm going to hold the block between my thighs, but now I'm going to start to engage with it. So when we speak about Mula Bandha, which is like the deepest, lowest part of our core, right? If you picture your core, your torso as a canister, we have the front part of the core, well-known abdominals. We have the back part of the core, those deep spinal stabilizers. And then the bottom, which is the core sling, the pelvic floor. So when we try to engage Mula Bandha, it gets confusing though, because there's so many other muscles down there. So it's easy to squeeze the glutes. It's really easy to start to tuck under. What I want you to do is, even, touching those muscles, try to persuade those muscles to relax. Breathe, right? You can see my belly moving, my ribs, my chest all expanding. And then as I exhale, I'm going to start with my leg squeeze. So it's inner thighs are assisting that Mula Bandha engagement. what happens is from that pelvic floor lift, it kind of leads into a deep core cinching. That's that transverse muscle firing. Inhale, and I try to relax and feel my body breathe. Exhale, begin again. So if you find yourself, using those other muscles, just go back to relaxation, go back to your belly breath. The other place I go with this in terms of hand position, palpation usage is right at or just slightly below the pubic bone. So I'm really in my pelvic floor here. I'm just getting personal with myself, right? So I'm just touching, even just touching at the pubic bone, I can start to feel as I exhale, movement in the muscles, drawing together and in and up. But it also helps to keep us away from those back of the hip muscles, those buttocks, which are so big and want to take over. Good. Go ahead and take your block away and just rock the knees side to side. It's like a windshield wiper. It's a nice kind of a rainy day out there. Sort of snowy, it's a little chilly, I won't lie. It's kind of hoping for a little more spring-like weather this April Fool's Day, but it's okay. We'll get there eventually. So that is kind of the base where I go to, where I want to start to feel what is that, the forces that are helping hold me steady, hold me in the center. It gets harder when we add more muscles to feel those deeper muscles kicking in and not those outer muscles kind of taking over. So to make it harder, I'm going to go ahead and kind of think of zippering up my core first and then lift my knees up. And that's purposeful. Like I take the block away so that the lifting of the knees is done kind of deliberately, watching as you lift the second knee, does your belly kind of pooch outward. That's again, other muscles taking over, those dominant six-pack muscles. And now I'm squeezing again, I'm back to it. Exhale. So yes, I did just refer to the abdominals. So this is much more abdominal intense position, especially just by virtue of having my feet in the air. So I inhale here as deeply as I can while still staying engaged. And then exhale to press on the block, feel that deeper lift, and then flatten across those hip bones. So the bottom part of the core and the bottom part of the canister of my body is kind of lifting up and in. When you feel like you're ready to make this harder, you can start to do this with straight legs. But for many of us who have tight hamstrings, it just feels like that's just too much of a strain. Maybe you have a little light bend in the knees. And further still, you can stretch the legs forward. The lower they go, of course, the harder it is to not let everything kind of either let go or loosen, or to feel your back taking over and tightening, or that six-pack muscle again kind of kicks in. Let's take that block away. Open up the knees, happy baby pose variation. So remember that it's not just about the legs, right? The positioning, yes, does help those inner legs stretch. But what we're trying to feel is our breath. our breath stretching down into the belly and into the pelvis. And those structures in the pelvis kind of opening and widening. So a couple deep breaths here. You can be anywhere with your happy baby pose, including holding the thighs, the shins, even up at the feet. But just watch that that tailbone doesn't start to tuck and curl. When it does that, we're tightening, engaging all that tightness through the buttocks, and then again, those abdominals are starting to maybe engage and tighten. Instead, we want those muscles to be lengthening and relaxing. Good. Close those knees up. Let's put it into a movement that we often practice. We love to feel some twisting, some rotation in the spine, or yoga practice. So I've got the block between my thighs. Again, make yourself as comfortable as you can be with that. And then as I rotate or turn my spine open into this chest stretch, into this lovely opening for my shoulder, I'm going to try to stay strong and steady through my center. So I like to start with the breath and then the block squeeze. Squeeze, feel that lift, feel the core, and then start to turn. So it's neck, shoulders, head, rib cage rotating. Gently, slowly coming back around, closing it up again. Good. Now it's not the be-all, end-all, that stretch with your hips staying still. This maybe is not the right format or class for introducing this idea, but when we have difficulty with lower back pain, sometimes if we completely close our hips up and hold it completely still, that may be exacerbating your pain. So if you hold your hips still, your knees squeeze, and you try to twist and your lower back is an issue, then what I would suggest is doing the opposite, like letting your hips turn into that motion. Again, where it's not one size fits all. So I start at the beginning with my deep breath, and then an exhale to engage, and I'm starting with the block, pulling in with my adductors, my two legs squeezing, and my inner hip, my inner pelvis, my inner belly, and then I'm going to turn my upper body. And come back around. We're going to roll all the way up, hands and knees, and bring that block or a ball with you into your cat and cow. So it seems a little bit funny because my knees are not free to move exactly when I'm kneeling on them, of course, but you can still kind of get a little bit of sliding. You can get a little play on the floor. So where I'm going to go with this is letting go, again, letting my breath move, letting my back arch, letting my belly move and stretch, and that's when the sit bones are wide and I'm not squeezing. So that's my inhale. And then as I exhale, I initiate from the bottom. So I'm going to start with that squeeze, cinching in with those adductors. My pelvis, you can see, start to tilt. My spine, shoulders, head. My belly is lifted up into my body. Inhale, start to send the sit bones wide and the tailbone back, and your spine long and even a little arched. And exhale to begin that pulling together. One more time, moving through. And then stop in your happy medium, your position where your back is supported by your core, but not rounded. We're not in that cat back. We're just trying to find that neutral. So for many of us, if our default position standing up is kind of, again, I mentioned clenching these muscles, tucking the tailbone under, what you want to do is err on the side of the other direction. So sit bones separating, almost like that inhale in the cow tilt. Send them back behind you and take a deep breath. And then we're going to add knee lift. So the knee lift, also popularly called the bear crawl. It's also called a short plank, right? We're just lifting our knees to a hover position, barely off the mat. So the muscles in the core will really help to lighten this up so it doesn't feel too overwhelming in your wrists, your shoulders, even on your knees and legs. Take a nice deep breath. And as you exhale, squeeze that ball without tucking under. So engage in the core, just cinching in and up. It lifts the knees. Push the floor away so you're working through those shoulders. And then slowly set it back down. So I'm not going to kind of really guide how many breaths. This is really a personal exploration. If you lift up and you find you can stay, maybe say another breath. Knees setting down. Separate the knees wide apart. Come into your child's pose. Just settling your belly, your chest down between your two thighs. Either stretching forward or circling the hands back towards your feet. Good. Press back up. Good. We're going to come upward into downward facing dog. So via that same kind of sequence. Start by getting long, being full with that breath. Squeeze and lift up. And then raise it up. You know, it's a little bit harder, but you can still manage maybe a little bit of our wiggling, traditional wiggling in downward facing dog here. And then use the squeeze. So as you come back into finding a nice neutral, again, neutral pelvis is not tucked under. It's sit bones for the sky, sit bones widening, spine long, crown of the head towards the floor in a long diagonal. But using that ball as a reminder of the very bottom part of your core. That internal lift. We'll come forward to plank pose. And here's where it gets harder. There's more demand for holding up when you're in that longer lever arm with the hips and the legs. So always dropping to the knees, but not having that pike in the hips. So that's where you get into you're using other muscles, letting those hip flexors really do the bulk of the work. Squeeze in, hug those legs together, lift up at the pubic bone. Good, we're gonna come all the way down to your tummies. Here's where it gets tricky with the dog. Cobra pose. Now I still have that object there. I'm not gonna really be doing much. I'm just gonna kind of just give it a gentle press as I try to lift my chest up. Shoulders engaging those upper back muscles, lifting your chest and head. Of course, there's a balance here. If I really push my tailbone up, I'm going to get those paraspinal muscles are really going to get going. So I do need my pubic bone on the mat. So that's why I mentioned that the squeeze of the block or the ball may be small here. Come back down, and we'll lift and press back up. Good. Here's where we're going to take that object away. Lift back up, downward facing dog. Take a walk forward, feet to hands. Plenty of bend in the knees here throughout forward folding, right? It's just much more forgiving on this whole elastic band that includes the lower back and the hamstrings. Inhale, lifting flat back, long back, neutral back, but keeping that bend in the knees if you need to. Exhale, forward fold, bow down. Inhale, press down and rise up, and I roll my spine up. I just find it feels better. So, how do we put this into our practice, right? We want to infuse our, bigger standing poses with this muscular work, this deeper muscular work. Good. We're going to start with tree pose today. I did this the other day, so it does involve a lot of those outer hip muscles, but I want you to focus today on that feeling of drawing in, drawing together. So I just start with standing with my 2 feet in mountain pose. And kind of remember, what was it like in cat and cow? You could draw under. We don't want to go that far with the squeeze. We want to just kind of draw together and in and up in terms of muscles. And then as you go to take your next exhale, take your weight into 1 foot. So I've made my way onto that one side without swaying out to the side. So that not swaying is not just my outer hip, but it's also that inner hip. And then you're going to create a little relationship between the 2 sides. So either you put your foot on the other calf, knee, or up high. And it's not just parking and sitting there, it's pushing in, and the other leg pushes back to meet it. Gently take the knee off of the foot off of the leg, and then place it back down. You can shake out between your 2 sides. And then you're going to make your way up into the other side. So yes, I definitely feel my back, my hip, my outer hip working. But there's this nice kind of pulling together sensation of the deep core sling that involves those adductors and involves the core lift out of them. So that I don't feel like I'm as heavy, I'm not dropping into the posture. So as I lift and exhale, as always, when we turn that knee open, I like to focus on not really cranking that knee, right? It's holding steady. And then relationship between the 2 sides. Deep breath. Try to lighten that foot, take that leg down, shake it out. Now the next place we'll go is a little isolated strengthening before we take both legs wide. So one more piece of equipment required. If you are on a carpet, you can kind of have a little bit of fun with this. If you they have a fancy fitnessy thing that's they're called slides, right? They're like plastic discs. You can, of course, go that far as to buy that. Sometimes when I've been on carpet floors, I just use paper plates, to be honest with you. But I'm here on a wood floor that's pretty slippery. And so I'm just using a towel. You could even just use a sock, right? And so it's under 1 foot. What we're practicing here is Prasarita Padottanasana, so both legs wide. When both legs are wide, what is holding us back together, what is holding our stability, really are those inner structures, the connection to our core, the connection to those adductor muscles. So I'm just going to practice one leg at a time. I'm going to let myself go to that leg a little bit and bend my knee a little bit. And then I'm just going to try to pull back together. So here I am and my head has disappeared. Maybe if I'm back here beyond my mat, you can see it a little bit more clearly. So it's a small lunging motion. And then I'm going to pull and lift up. Looks a little bit like a kind of a skater lunge. The moment of truth is really, how do you unweight? How do you get your weight off of that foot? How do you pull it back in? And of course, it depends on how far you've gone, how hard it will be to get back. But there's that inhale, expansive, and then as I exhale, really picking and lifting up. I do put more weight on my toe, to be honest with you, before I try to unweight my foot and pull back together. So try a couple of those, see what it feels like in your body. If it's hard for you to bend the knee, you could try doing it with a little bit of a straighter knee. Just try not to lock the knees. But generally, I treat this almost like a little lunge. So I soften the knee and I go to the leg. Inhale, and then I exhale and try to pull it back. I feel both sides when I do that. So again, symmetry and balance. One more on this side. Just to kind of reinforce that. So we're going to step wide on your sticky mat now once again. Something that's more supportive. It's not going anywhere. You're not going to slide. Wide is a relative term for our bodies, each of our bodies, right? So I, maybe a little bit too wide for me. I find that for people with issues in their lower back, their SI joint, if you go wider, that may pull on that pubic bone, pubic symphysis. It might pull on those attachments at those adductor muscles and create more instability, more pain. So be really cautious how far apart you go with your feet. The knees can be slightly bent here. Again, that depends on your knees too. Hands to your hips, take a deep breath. Just think about growing tall through the spine, dropping the tailbone straight down. And then in the center and between those 2 points, deep breath. Moving and expanding. Exhale, lifting and engaging. Now my legs are wide apart, so I can't squeeze anything here, but I can isometrically engage. It's not that I turn my feet or my knees inward, but I imagine kind of wrinkling up my mat and pulling it together, pulling my feet together. And what I feel when I do that is my core lifts up into my body. So now as I come forward, hip hinging, leaning from my hips, not rounding my back, I'm going to try to go back to that. I just lost my blocks, so let's bring those into the picture. And it could also be a chair, as I did the other day. Something a little higher. If you can drape forward and fold without hurting the low back and the hamstrings, do that. But again, this is about pulling in together. Good. When you're ready to come up, a nice soft bend in the knees, hands to hips, and roll the spine to gently come all the way back up. Good. We'll step those feet together and we'll come on down. So I tend to do a lot more strengthening in my yoga practice than stretching, you might have noticed, but we are going to let those inner structures lengthen now. So going in the other direction. This is Parivrita Jani Shirshasana, so I've got one leg wide and one knee bent. I'm sort of centered between the two legs with my torso and lifting up tall. The stretched leg, the foot is flexed, and I'm going to start to lean over to the side. So lengthening on the back of the leg, you may have a bent knee if it's too much for your hamstrings and your lower back. You may have a straight knee, and you may be reaching over, but remember this isn't about touching your foot, this is about your hip, lengthening those muscles. And posture, feel how your hips are relating to your whole spine, your head. I'm just going to come gently back to the center and simply switch my legs. So it's a wider position. You do not have to have your foot touching your thigh. My straight leg foot is flexed. I'm going to lift up in between, orienting my spine, and then tilt over towards that leg. Sometimes if we have restriction in the hip and that tilting, you'll feel your whole sit bone kind of tilt off the mat. Kind of give that hip a little bit more support and see if you can keep your sit bones down. So again, symmetry, even in the midst of an asymmetrical pose. Symmetry in the hips. Come back up. And then send two legs wide. So this is again not about splaying your legs, or even, it doesn't have to be straight knees. This is more about how can you feel safe and go into that stretch mindfully, right? So that you're not overstretching and you're holding the structures in the center of your body steady. So take a deep breath. These knees can be bent or straight. You're upright on your sit bones. And then feel the heels pressing. And it's almost like that standing prasarita pose. I'm almost feeling like I'm trying to pull together. Engaging all the muscles here and through the inner leg. And then I'm going to come forward any amount. It's long, it's not rigidly flat, but it's long, it's a long curve for my spine. Drape forward if it feels comfortable to you. But try not to be rounded, but then look up, right? You know, I think we think that at that point we're flattening our back. If you're having trouble with flattening your back, come higher. Keep your chin tucked and think the whole spine comes flat, right? Come gently back upward and pull those legs together, shake them out. So our relaxation for today, we'll open those hips up, open up those inner thighs with Supta Baddha Konasana. So you've got the soles of your feet touching and the knees open. But again, when we open, right, sometimes we need support, especially if we're going to be there for a longer period of time. So bringing in those blocks, whatever setting feels supportive. Lie down. Arms can rest by your side or be on your belly. Feel your breath. Many breaths. doesn't stop. It's always changing. Support your muscles as you come out of this kind of draped open position. Maybe lifting your legs up, literally using your arms. And then roll off to one side. And press yourself gently back up. Coming more upright through the spine. And hopefully some of this made sense for your body. Whether you squeeze an actual object and touch it, or feel that tactile cue for yourself, or just think about the muscular connection, right, between the inner thighs and the inner core. And hopefully it can help Mula Bandha make sense for a lot of our bodies, right, how that relates to abdominals. May we be happy, may we be at peace, may we live with more ease, and may we be healthy. Namaste. Thanks for being here today. Have a great day.